Oh, don't worry, guys. Do not worry one bit. That intro music's gonna go bye-bye. We got a new intro coming in, but I just had to play it so it can kinda, like, work itself in. But a lot of people were asking, and we're back off of, a abbreviated off season.
Right?
Cindy had some things to do, some people to see, just, famous people stuff. And,
It's all
and I had
good. Everybody's good.
we had a busy summer, so that was
Yeah.
the obvious. So we're gonna recap the off season. Been a little bit, and we're gonna talk about the Red Wings. Obviously, we have our season preview coming out probably Monday morning. So if you're that way, you can get up to speed on your Red Wings hockey. So again, we're gonna introduce myself as Joe Chap, and that is Cindy Berry, and we are the Red Alert Podcast, a Detroit Red Wings podcast. You can find us everywhere. And you know what, City, to make it easier on people, because I know you're old and you just celebrated a birthday not too long ago.
Not
To
this
make it
one though.
to
Not
make it
this one. But I'm
oh,
repping this guy today because I got this. You're
to
right.
make
I celebrated my birthday and I got this for my birthday. Look at that. My
oof,
new man in my life.
oh man, Mo Sider. Now he's
Love
gonna be here.
him.
He's gonna be here for a while. We're gonna talk about that. But for you older people, we're gonna make you a QR code. So if you could just scan it with your phone, it'll take you to everywhere we have our podcast. So
Yeah.
if you want to go on those channels, you could do that as well. But we're back for another season, and this is going to be a fun season. I have a feeling like the vibes are real in Detroit. Obviously with the Tigers playing in the postseason right now, which is unprecedented because there's no one on earth that thought that Detroit Tigers would make it in the postseason. That was number one, and the number two thing is I actually think the Red Wings have a lot of good talent, and I think they're treading in the right direction. And
Well,
me and you have talked about it for God. We're going on 2 years now. It's been a while.
yeah.
We've been saying that, this is gonna be the year that, like, they kinda, like, get it together. Like, obviously, last year, me and you we were close. We were really close
Yeah.
with the wins and the losses, and I was right about the goaltender, and you were right about, I think, the team MVP and the team goal scorer, which was phenomenal.
Yeah.
Cindy, is like a she's like a vintage, like, Nostradamus, and, but that look, we got a lot to get to, obviously, with the Red Wings, and, what were you gonna say?
Yeah, well, I was going to say, that I was one of those people, actually. I was raised on baseball, those who watched for a while. I'm Cindy Berry, by the way, and really glad to be back with all of you. I've had so many people that come up to me at events, believe it or not, and say, "We miss you. Where are you? I'm your biggest fan." And by the way, everybody's always the biggest fan, and I love all of you. So that's great. They're like, "When are you going to be back?" So I'm really glad to be back with you. And I was one of those people, for those of you who, like I said, who know me. I was raised on baseball. My dad was a ball player, okay? So hockey was like a late arrival into my life, but a very welcome and happy arrival because now I'm a rabid fan. Went from knowing nothing to being this crazy fan and spending time with all of you talking about the Red Wings. But I did not believe, I was one of those doubters. Joe, I was. I said I didn't think that the Tigers were going to make it into the playoffs. And they proved me wrong. And I'll tell you, when we go to talk later in this podcast, there are people saying the same thing. I've been reading some sports media, which you should never do. But I was reading some sports media in preparation for coming on today, and there's a lot of doubters out there about the Red Wings. But I think Detroit has proven over and over again we got the grit. Don't tell us we can't do something. They told the Lions, they told the Tigers. Don't be telling the Red Wings that they can't make the postseason. I believe they can.
Well, it's just a age a story is as old as time, with the, sports, and obviously, like, the Tigers, no one expected to make the playoffs, no one did, and then they get on this
Mhm.
run where they become, like, the best team in baseball, and they kinda make a run, and I always tell people, sometimes you can't predict things because there are underliers to that equation. Like, no one knew that trading Jack Flaherty would get them a good shortstop and Trey Sweeney. Some of those things happen, and the same things can happen with the Red Wings. A lot of people talk about they're gonna miss David Perron, they're gonna miss Shane Gothisbehere, they're gonna miss this guy, oh, Jake Wallman. But I have a feeling, just my little hunch, that the players that they've added in the offseason are gonna be a way plus more than the negative additions that the additions you made and the subtractions you made from the roster. It's gonna be all right.
Oh, for sure. Obviously, the reason why Stevie made the moves he did is because he had the recipe, but he didn't have the right ingredients, and he knew it. Okay,
Mhm.
so he made some changes. And we get attached to our players, right? We get very attached to our roster players in particular, and even some of our prospects, right? Some of our prospects, I know that people are very attached to, and if they end up getting traded or something happens where they never make the roster and we don't see them on the ice for the Wings, there's people that are going to be really disappointed in that. But you got to have the right ingredients to make the recipe work. Doesn't work without them. And I think that's what we saw happen from last season to this season. And the other thing I was going to say too is that from the very beginning that Steve got here, he said it was going to be a while. And I know that we've been impatient. Even you and I, we've had these days, right, where we're not cool with where the Wings are at in the standings or where they're at in development or whatever like that. But the fact of the matter is that Steve said from the beginning, it was going to be either the 24 or 25, 26 season that he was looking for the Wings to be a contender. So I think they made it farther than he thought they would last year. The problem is just, it's managing expectations, and the fan base, we have got such a high expectation because we've been spoiled and, not for the last 8 years, but it's been quite a drought. We're ready for it to end.
Well, I think a lot of people do is they show the success of Brad Holmes with the Detroit Lions,
Yeah.
and I think that's the way it should be. Which football is a lot easier to rebuild than any other sport than you could think of. I mean, even basketball, like if you get the right superstar, you could be on your way to a championship caliber. But in football, like those kids are usually ready to come. In baseball and in hockey, it's kind of like, especially with hockey, you got to draft develop, and then you can't overspend because the salary cap. Unlike
Yep.
baseball, they have no salary cap. So baseball and hockey, you're waiting on prospects to develop. You're waiting on those players to mature and get better. And if you do it the right way, it ends up being very very good. And if you do it the wrong way, the next thing you know is you're rebuilding again. And we've seen that in Detroit with both the Tigers and the Red Wings. I mean, Ken Holland started the rebuild for the Red Wings, didn't go through.
Right.
Started the rebuild with El Avila started the rebuild with the Tigers, didn't go through. So you're on their second turn of rebuilds, and if you can't get it right, that's what happens. Like it's a longer build than if you just did it the right way, and that's what happens in this sport.
Oh, for sure. And that's what I'm saying, is just it's a matter of people are getting impatient and sometimes things don't go right. Even when you say you're in the rebuild process, you can have bumps in the road even then. It's not like they go smoothly. Sometimes you got to tear it all down and start over. That's just the way it is. So, and sometimes those things are just out of your control. So I'm excited for the roster that we've got now. And if people don't think that the addition of Vladimir Tarasenko and re-signing Patrick Kane, and thank God my man, we got him back. But yeah, if they don't think that that's going to be a tremendous change in potentially a really game changer for the Red Wings, then I don't know where they're thinking. Well, some of what I'm hearing about Tarasenko is he's not the player he used to be. Kane's getting old. I've heard all of this. You know what? Nonsense. Quit looking at the negatives. These guys bring far more positive than they bring negative. And I think that's a game changer. And sometimes it's just a matter of getting the right chemistry too, Joe. That's it. By the way, speaking of chemistry, my friend, I was told I needed to get a little sassy with you today. So I might
Oh
just be
boy.
a little sassier than
Now
you're used to. I'm going to go
now
back to the old Cindy and Joe
now
days.
now what did I do now? Because
Nothing.
I'm it's like
People just like me to argue with you, and I'm up for that.
well,
I'm up for it.
I always welcome a good argument because and I know that arguing with the Italian women could go nowhere. Like
Well, you know
nowhere.
what? If nothing else, it's entertaining. So I'm just giving you fair
It's good
warning
practice for
that
me too, so
yeah, I was just giving you fair warning, see, that I was requested that I've just been that I need to be a little sassier with you because I've been agreeing with you too much. They miss the old Cindy and Joe show days
yeah, and
when
we need to get back to our punching gloves.
yeah. So
Yes,
I'm just
exactly.
see, but I'm a lady about it. I'm giving you a little bit of heads up. Anyways,
See,
but I
if you would have been sassy from the start, I wouldn't have noticed the difference, to be honest. I mean, like when you get in this mode, you're just like, Hey, idiot." I'm like, "Whoa." Where did this come from?
Well, see, look, I didn't look. You mentioned my birthday and that I was getting older because you always love to point out that I'm a little bit older than you. But here's the thing, Joe, I will always be older. But here's one thing you can't get away from: I'm always going to be cuter.
Oh,
So,
better looking. Yep. Yeah, I won't
so,
be better looking.
so there you go. You see, so it's okay. It works out. You've got youth versus beauty. I'm good with that.
Well, sometimes
I'm
it
not
even
really that vain, I'm just messing with you.
sometimes it evens out. Having the youth is all right, but then having the beauty is sometimes good in
So
traffic situations. That you might find yourself into.
I'm not going to deny the
And with
fact
and
I
with
have used that in
hold on,
those
and
cases once or twice.
with your um with your career, with your you know job discrepancy, uh you kind of have to be good looking. Now there's a couple ugly people in your field, but for the most part, like what I'm saying, like you have to have a good face. And I mean the people that don't, they basically don't make it. They're kind of like fluffer nutter.
Well, I'll tell you, I don't care what it, and by the way, there's some we got some pretty good looking guys on the Tigers team. I hadn't been paying too much attention because like I said, I didn't think they're going to make the playoffs, but I was like, oh, he's not too bad. And some of these young prospects coming up for the Red Wings, he got a little bit of eye candy there too. Just for the ladies who are watching, I know 3 out of 4 of our viewers are men, and I love you guys for that, and that's why I am here, because I enjoy having these conversations, and I love the male audience feedback, man. I love it when they tell me I don't know what I'm talking about. I love it
Oh
when they
yeah.
say all this stuff, but hey, we're all loving on the same team here, and I'll call them out when they're falling short for sure.
So it was an interesting off season. Like, if we're gonna just get into it. Um,
Yeah.
they signed like Jack Campbell, Eric Gustafsson, 2 million, 2 years, 2 million. They signed Cam Talbot. They signed Legason, which is he's a depth forward. Christian Fisher. They also signed hold on, Vladimir Tarasenko. They traded Robbie Fabry. Jake Wallman's gone, obviously. So, people say Tarasenko isn't the same player. I don't know. This is last year's stats: 23 goals, 32 assists. Seems pretty good to me. But like, I made a YouTube video during free agency, and like if you look at how much money was spent in the first day of free agency compared to the rest of it, there was 64 signings and $745.8 million. And then you look at some of the players that were signed that were rumored to Detroit, like Stamkos and Marshall and Lindholm and Arvidsson and Zadorov and Stevenson. I mean, we already talked about this before, I think, but a lot of these teams are. I mean, Edmonton was in the playoffs last. They were in the Stanley Cup Finals last year, right? The Bruins are always the Bruins. They're going to be good for a while. But the Nashville Predators and the Seattle Kraken, they're no tax states. So when you see the number of $8 million or 5.5 or 6.25, just imagine it would be probably a million more in the state of Michigan because of our taxes and everything. So that's what it breaks down to. And over the whole off season, like people were telling me that Detroit isn't better than what they were. They said they lost like they lost David Perron, right? Who was a key contributor, got to spare. And I just don't I think to me, I think you got better defensively overall because a guy like Gustafsson is a way better um, defensive player than Shane got to spare. I think that the team defense really struggled last year, especially and Malone's talked about. He said, the team defense needs to be better, and it does. Dave Braun was kind of he was bad in his own end too. And Daniel Sprong, who was another guy who left, he couldn't even stay on the ice. I mean, they were like, please, just go away. Just go away. I think that when you get a player like Tarasenko, obviously Tarasenko is not no defensive wizard, but you're gonna fill some of those spots with guys that can play both ways. That's what you're trying to do, and the team defense absolutely needs to be better. And I felt like that was one of their big, that was one of their big weaknesses last year.
they had definitely upgraded. I don't think anyone can really stand there and make the argument that we're a worse team now than we were last season. Question is, are we good enough? That remains to be seen. I think a lot of things dependent on that. It's not just the talent that you've got, the team that you ice. It could very well be, again, chemistry. Unfortunately, I usually get to see some of that stuff when I'm up at training camp. I couldn't go this year. So I can't really speak to what I think chemistry is going to look like. But the four key signings we made were Patrick Kane, Vladimir Tarasenko, and getting Sider and Raymond on long-term deals. I think that was absolutely critical. I think even though Tarasenko and Kane are not building blocks, what are they? They are, Stanley Cup champions, right? And multiple Stanley Cup champions. So they've already been where Steve Yzerman is trying to get this young team to go. And so I don't think you can underestimate the value that they bring just in the mentorship of his young core that he has coming up. So I think regardless of where things end up at the end of the day in terms of points and performance and standings and all of that, obviously everybody wants to make the postseason, but you've got a couple of solid young core locked in. You got a couple of experienced veterans who could take this team where they want to go. And you've got your captain, Dylan Larkin. I'll tell you, he's the hungriest out of all of them. And that's the other determining factor. Not only do you have chemistry how's the chemistry going to work out, but you have to want it, right? You have to be hungry. I think when you look at the Tigers and you look at the Lions, would you say, well, the Lions now, I guess you can really say that they have probably one of the best offensive lines in the NFL. But for the last couple of years, that wasn't necessarily the case. They were developing it for sure.
Right.
But why do these teams, you've got lots of talented teams out there that don't make it as far into the season as you'd like or you think they should. But why is that? And I have to tell you, it's hunger. You have to want it. You've got to be hungry for it. And I think, quite frankly, if the Wings would have signed some of those other players available in free agency that you pointed out, not only would it have cost us more money, but I'm not so sure that those guys are on the hungry end. I don't know
Yeah.
if I'd classify them that way. One of the things I'm looking to see is, do we have enough pieces in this puzzle to turn a me team into a we team? I think the Wings had the we team part of it last year, which is why people were so disappointed in some of the losses there, Wallman and others. But they didn't have quite the talent yet. They just didn't have that. So hopefully, these changes will give the Red Wings that. Couple of the other new fresh faces that I think are going to be a very welcome addition. We'll have to see how they do, and if they keep if they bring in Nate Danielson, if they keep Jonathan Bergeron in
Oh yeah.
the depth chart. Elmer Soderblom is on there right now. He
Yeah.
was, I would say, kind of a bust last year, but I just think he wasn't ready. When we first saw him, I think they brought him up too early. I think they knew that he couldn't handle the pressure or couldn't handle the talent of her or whatever it was, hadn't developed enough. But we've got him on the depth chart now. So let's see if that'll stick, right? I think people kind of hope to see maybe Marco Casper. I think that would have been a mistake. I mean, will we see him maybe second half of the season? I don't know. But I know some people talked about being disappointed they didn't see Marco Casper, but I think you
Well,
just see a
Marco Casper's
rewind
not.
of
Well,
Soderblom
Casper's playing in the preseason. It's going to be
in the
who's made.
preseason, but he's not on the depth chart
Well,
for the roster.
they haven't made the official rosters yet, so that's the thing. Like it's like
They got preliminaries out though, because I'm looking at it from CBS.
Yeah, but you know what? These people that speculate on these media people that speculate who's gonna make it, who's not. First of all, there's no one that could guess Stevie Y's mind. And I was trying to think about it today. I was like, could Carter Mazer make the roster? Because he's playing pretty good in the preseason. Maybe. I think Jonathan Bergeron has a spot in the roster already. That's my opinion. Could Nate Danielson? No, maybe they send him into Grand Rapids for a couple, just kind of like maybe a Simon Evanson treatment where you go down there, you'll learn how you're gonna do. If you do it good, you'll be up by midseason, maybe earlier if there's injuries. But like Marco Casper, like that's the guy that's like really like supposedly in the preseason he's really turning heads. And could he make the roster? I mean, you always leave it up to Stevie Y to bring that one guy up that he thinks that is capable of making the roster. And I think what it's going to come down to be honest, Cindy, is like, does the person that they bring up, is he like that guy? Like, is he going to be hungry enough? Like you kind of said, like the one thing I could say about Soderblom, the one issue I had with him is he was kind of soft, and
Yeah.
you can't be soft. First of all, dude, you're 6'8" and like 200 and something pounds. You could put a Mack truck through someone's ass, like literally. Like if you got
Yeah.
mean,
And he
that'd
was
be
afraid to
scary,
use
man.
that body. He was afraid to get physical, right?
Yeah, yeah.
And that's the asset that he's got. You know, one of the other guys that's definitely in the lineup, I think you're going to see in the lineup is going to be Simon Edvinson. And the
Oh
question is,
yeah.
can he perform, right? Especially if he's in the second pair, can he perform? One thing I saw about Simon Edvinson, and I've seen him mature a tremendous amount, is he was pretty cocky when he first got here, and I think that was one of the things too that not only did it hinder him from a technical perspective, but I think it hindered him in the locker room because he just had attitude. He had swagger. I mean, it's great to have swagger, but not to the point that you're arrogant when you haven't earned it yet. You know what I mean? Nobody likes an arrogant ass anyway. And I'm not saying he was an ass, but I'm just saying he definitely had an air of thinking that he was all of that and bag of chips, and that he got proven to him quite early on that that was not the case, and didn't make the roster last year. I think he was a little salty about it, to be honest, but it was the right call.
That's good though, because he's gonna come up there, and I thought that Simon Evanson should have been up earlier, and I will say till the cows come home that if Evanson was up when before he eventually came up, I think that Detroit would have made the playoffs, because I do think Edvinson's that and a bag of chips, and I think that he's a confident kid. He's kind of the polar opposite of a Moritz Sider. Mo is kind of like the who kind of like happy-go-lucky
Don't
kid.
be getting down on my Mo,
No, I'm
man.
not. I'm not. I'm saying
He's intense.
here's what Sider reminds me of. Sider is a nice kid that like just plays with an attitude. Simon Edvinson reminds me of a kid that like mommy and daddy got him some nice sticks. They got him some nice gloves, and he's gonna go play out. He's gonna go. He's good. He's obviously good, but he's gonna go out there, have an attitude, and that's all right. If you have the good attitude, you're gonna win a
Good.
lot. You're gonna be good.
Just good. Mo Sider's beyond just good. But the
No,
problem is he
I said
struggled the last.
that was Simon Edvinson I was talking
Oh,
about.
okay.
Like, cause
He's all right.
I thought
He just
Edvinson, I thought Edvinson was really good, and now Sider, I love Sider. I think Sider is great, but like I said,
Yeah,
they're
yeah,
just two different kind of players, and like
yeah.
you keep hearing about like Albert Johansson, like the kid that might come up on a defensive end, and like he's another kind of like a strange kid. Like he's not like Mo where he's overly physical. He's not like Simon Edvinson where he's got like a cockiness to him. He's kind of like
Hmm.
a just a your run of the mill Swedish player, you know.
Well, and the Europeans are a little different. They really are. Here's what I really appreciate about the European players. They tend to be more disciplined. And quite frankly, I think Mo Sider's disciplined. I think part of that is his cultural background too. I mean, I've got some German in me too. And let me tell you though, they're hard work. It's like they're born with it. They're just born with that work ethic. And he's got a tremendous amount of discipline as well. So I just think that that's where that comes from. We've got a lot of great prospects. I'll tell you, one of the ones I want to talk to you about, because I know that he was, I don't say your guy, but I know you certainly were talking about him years before he was on anybody's radar, and that's Amadeus Lombardi. He scored
Yep.
that goal the other day,
Yep.
and
Yes, last night.
you know what he looked like to me when he scored that, and call me crazy, and you might want to disagree with me, and people might say I'm nuts, but I'm going to go out on a limb and tell you who he looked like to me. He looked like Pavel Datsuk.
Yeah,
Just the way.
he's got that flair to him.
Yeah, the way he moves, his
Yeah,
stick handling. I mean,
yeah.
he's got some magic hands, that kid.
He's
And I think,
his hands are the
yeah,
best. His hands are the best part about his game. And if he
yeah,
ever found out how to skate at an NHL level, he's gonna be fine. He's gonna be a really good find for the Red Wings, because
yeah,
his only thing was he had the hands. Like if you go back to watch the OHL with the Flint Firebirds, that's where he played,
yeah,
fantastic. His hands were second to none. You usually could see hands in any league, right? You could see someone that has the deeks and the hands to do what they could do, but when you get to the NHL, AHL levels, it's a little bit of adjustment, but the stick handling still stays. Like you don't lose that. So you're just trying to find your skating legs to move with your stick handling because he's a fantastic stick handler, but
Yeah.
he just needed to kind of get himself into the AHL method, the NHL method, and once he hits that, that's where he's gonna go.
A little bit more development, that's all. And Mo Sider, is as great as we both like him, I know that. But he's struggled the last couple years ever since. And I warned everybody about this when he won and was, the trophy as a rookie.
Yeah,
I said, watch
Calder.
for that sophomore slump or potentially, and he has not. It's like, where do you go from there? He set the bar so high his first year. I think you have to have an understanding that he definitely produced, but I know that there's some people saying, hey, he's kind of going in the wrong direction. Well, when you have a season like that, your rookie year, where else is there to go? There's going to be an adjustment, but don't judge his talent or his potential performance or his contribution to this team based on the last couple of years. I think this year is going to be his year. I think Raymond's is too. And if they both have the years that I am thinking they're going to have, that's going to be huge, absolutely huge. And so that's why I was so excited to sign him. But as excited as I was to get Mo, I'll tell you who I think is probably the most significant ad as far as making really making a playoff run, and that I think we needed Cam Talbot. I think that was key. We held on to Lyon, which is he's great and a backup, but and I thought it was interesting. I know Billy Huso, I still, I like Billy. I met him the first year he got here. He's a very cool dude, and I like him a lot. But he's struggling too, and everybody's got those slumps right now. They've kind of got him in a depth position,
Yeah.
in a third position right now, and if he has to stay there until he works stuff out, no problem. But we needed Cam Talbot. We got that. I think what I call him an A-list, like talking about my celebrity friends. Is he an A-lister?
No, he's not an
No,
A-lister.
no,
He's
but
like
I
your
think he's
C-lister.
capable, and
Yeah,
I
well,
think he can rise to the occasion, and we needed him,
well,
you
I
know?
think what I think what Steve Eisenman was trying to do, because a lot of people they don't understand this, but when you have a goaltender like Billy Huso who has refused to stay healthy, refused, like he needs to stay healthy.
Yes, he
Like
woke up and made a conscious effort. I'm gonna be screwed up today.
I don't care about. I know it's
You're
not his fault.
rude.
I know it's not his fault, but I'm saying,
Yeah.
you haven't stayed healthy. If you expect Steve Eisen to be like, well, he's trying to stay healthy, he'll be okay. No, that's not the way it works, especially in pro hockey. It's kind of a "what have you done for me lately" kind of thing. Everyone in the NHL deals with the same thing. Like if you're not healthy for a while, you get tagged with the whole injury prone, or you get tagged with the weak, soft, all that kind of jazz. I mean, we've heard it from guys like Patrick Laine is hurt again. He's been hurt. Seems like every year he gets hurt, so he's got that kind of stigma to him. Billy Huso the same way. I love Billy Huso goaltender. I think he could be really, really good. The issue with Billy Huso is one thing: health. So last year they had James Reimer, which that was an uh, awful signing. Awful signing. Not because of the way he plays, but because of how old he is. Obviously, I don't care about your age, but you could tell like late in the year, like they were running Alex Lyon into the net every game they could. And then when Alex Lyon was getting beat up and everything, because you can't play 14 nights straight. They're like, all right, James Reimer, you go in, and I'm like, well, there goes 4 goals. Like, it's
Oh,
just like
come on. Rhymes had his nights.
he had his nights, but look,
Yeah.
he had his nights, but like when you go through an NHL season, like it's tough. And these goaltenders, like especially in all of hockey, like I think there's only 3 or 4 goaltenders I could say are like true Iron Men. That's what they call them now. Like Bobrovsky could be one of those guys, but he split time recently.
Yeah.
Shesterkin is another one. Um, the kid from Sorokin from the Islanders, he's another one that could stay health. That's an Iron Man because The Islanders, boy, do they need him because if they don't get his goaltending, they usually lose. So that's the whole thing about like we used to see Patrick Wall start like 70 games, right? We used to see Henrik Lundqvist start 70 games, and we'd be like, that's what you want your goalie to be. Now it's looking like you need goaltending depth. Like you need goaltending depth. It's great to have that great goaltender because you obviously want that for the playoffs and everything. We've seen that with the Bobrovsky, and we've seen it with some of the people in the playoffs. But when you get to the point of that point where you lose someone like a goaltender, like you need depth. You need depth, and that's what they have. That's why they had to go get Cam Talbot. Like it was like funny because what I heard during the offseason was why not Kosa? And I told people Kosa needs like a hat. He might come up in the mid year. That's my
Yeah.
opinion. I think he might be like that, where like middle of the year, maybe he comes up or something, but he needs time. Like you just need time because when you come into NHL, totally different ball game, totally different, totally different. It's like
Well, especially for goalies, because goalies take longer to develop anyway.
well, it's like I was listening to a guy, a catcher. He's a catcher for I think he's a catcher for the Dodgers, for the the LA Dodgers, and he said that like he's a younger player, and they go, "What's the biggest difference from coming to AAA to Major League Baseball?" And he's like saying like, "Well, the hardest thing about it was these guys have way better action on their curveballs. They have way extra. They have more action on any pitch that they throw, and it's like that's hockey too. Like the speed of the
Yep.
puck in the AHL drastically goes up when you get to the NHL, especially when you go against a guy like Pastrnak or Austin Matthews or Connor McDavid or Matthew Tkachuk. Like these guys are for real. Like you don't get no days off. Like there is no you know Washington Generals in hockey anymore. Like rarely.
Right. And it's interesting because even the guys you might have played in the anyway in the AHL, right? Maybe that, they move back and forth or whatever, and now they're on NHL. They play differently on NHL ice than they do on AHL ice.
The Tigers just
Okay.
got a home run, so I'm just letting you know.
Woo! Rock
But
on. All right. I'm telling you, they are on a roll. They are. Uh, I'm completely changed my opinion on what their capabilities are. I was
I
very
can't believe I just
impressed.
knocked you off your point. My point was though,
You did. I'm
my
telling you, guys play different on NHL ice. Even if they're AHL guys, they're gonna play differently on NHL ice because everybody's game gets elevated there. Because people have to rise to the level of talent that they're surrounded by in order to be effective. So even if you played a guy in the AHL in the minors, right, he's going to be different when he's on NHL ice, and you got to be aware of that. It's just a whole different ball game.
I laugh because people tell me all the time, and it's funny to me. But like it's like they're like there's he played in the WHL. It doesn't mean nothing. Like I was listening to Rod Brendamore a couple, a year ago, or whatever, and he was saying that he wants kids from college hockey more than he wants kids from the O or the A or he wants those kids that are like polished and they played some hockey, some real hockey, college hockey is pretty tough right now. But
Hmm.
he's basically saying like, look, it's a totally different game now. Like the kids that are coming from college, they're more ready to play, and it's like kind of gives you a glimpse of what you can expect with Trey Augustine because that kid's played a lot of good minutes in hockey. I mean, he went to like the NCAA hockey tournament as a freshman. They won the Big Ten championship. He won a freaking gold medal. Like this kid's a stud, and you obviously Costa has a lot of good uh characteristics of him. But he's going to take a little bit longer because he came from the WHL, which is known as a defensive type league, which that's where you got like Danielson came from, Bedard, but usually it's a defensive type league. That's where Rasmussen came from. So all the people that say like, oh, he should be up and they shouldn't have signed Cam Talbot or Jack Campbell. I think Stevie Y literally looked at last year at the end of the last year, and you can agree with me here, Cindy, because we talked about this on the podcast. But um, late in the year when Alex Lyon was asked to start all those games, and you could tell he was getting worn down. Like the goals that he was letting in late in the year That wasn't Alex Lyon. That
You
wasn't
mean the
Alex
beach
Lyon.
balls he was letting in? Is that what you're talking about?
Yeah, because it was like it was so bad. Like it was like
Yeah.
there's no
Yeah.
way that he's turned his corner. Like he was playing so good, but when you get ran into the ground, especially in hockey as a goaltender, whew, that sucks.
That's why they needed Talbot. The question is going to be, are the Red Wings going to carry three goalies on their roster or not? That's a decision they're going to have to make. And I think it's going to be a tough one because I don't think, as you pointed out, they don't have any real go-tos. They don't have any A-listers there. So if you don't, you got to do it in the aggregate, right? So they may have to carry those three goalies on the roster. I don't know what that's going to mean for everything else, but that's going to be something they're going to have to adjust for if that's the case. But it's going to be tough to get a roster spot, really. I mean, these guys are going to have to compete for these jobs. And I think you're going to see guys who maybe didn't have to compete before do now because of the strength of the prospects. But I don't think that Steve's going to bring up anybody who's not ready.
Yeah, I think this is the first time in a couple years where I could say that the roster is going to be a tough cookie to crack. You know what I'm saying? Like I think last year
Yeah.
there was
Before
there
we
was
were like scraping the bottom of the barrel,
right.
right?
Yeah,
Trying
I
to
mean,
find somebody who can lace their skates and tape their stick, right?
for years you had guys that like God, name a guy like what was the uh God, Austin Zarnak, right?
Yep.
Great kid. He's from your neck of the woods. But was he an NHL player? Probably not. That kind of tells you what your roster kind of looks like. Um, eh, Guys like Austin Watson, who that he could play a critical role too. He's a tough little son of a gun from Ann Arbor. But it just goes to show you, like when you get to this level of hockey, like the rosters have to be really really concrete, and the Red Wings have to carry another goaltender. You do wonder what that does for their how they proportion like the roster.
Yeah.
Do they put more forwards? Do they put more defensemen? Do they have an even number? Something like that. That's how it's gonna go, and sadly, that's the way it has to go. So
I think I think it's going to be very important to see, and I know this has like kind of been standard kind of across hockey, is you to look to see where are they at Thanksgiving.
yeah,
I think that's going to be even more important for the Detroit Red Wings
yeah,
because th- I think that is going to be what the tone is going to be. You'll be able to see if they're hungry. You'll be able to see if they've gelled. Well, you'll see the chemistry and all that. I think that that is going to have a lot to do with how they end up. I was surprised at the end of last season that they were able to pivot out of where they were. And I think that's when Patrick Kane came, is when that transition happened. The fact that we're starting this season with Kane on the roster, let's see what kind of impact that has. I'm willing to bet you're going to see a different team start of the regular season. You're going to see a different team. You're going to see the same team you saw at the end of last year. And I think that Tarasenko has just brought even another level of intensity and another level of that veteran who, he's coming off. We had veterans, right? We had veterans last year. We had Perron. You had a couple other
Ron.
veterans on there, but they weren't coming off Stanley Cup wins. Tarasenko is not too far off of, that Stanley Cup win. So,
Yeah,
um,
last year.
right, exactly. That's what I'm saying. So
No,
that's pretty fresh for him. And I think that's a momentum carrier still, even to this new team. And I think he wants to bring that as well. I think these guys that are on there, I think um, the acquisitions in the off season are guys who want to bring that to this team. I just want to see if they're going to be hungry too.
well, I look at it like this: if you're Patrick Kane or you're Vladimir Tarasenko, if you didn't think this team was close to winning, you wouldn't come here. Period. Period.
I don't
'Cause
know. I was wondering if they maybe came here kind of like it's in the sunset of their careers. Michigan's a nice place to
No,
raise a
no, no,
family.
no, no,
They
no,
keep
no,
the
no.
wife happy,
Absolutely not.
stuff like that.
First of all, you're no wife is going to be happy moving to Michigan in the winter. Okay, not one. Because I know certain someone who's wearing a cider jersey right now who will literally deliberately have podcasts in Florida. So I don't want to hear from you, Cindy. You
Hey,
You
wait
people,
a minute. Maybe
you
they like to
people,
ski. Their
you
wives could like to ski or something.
no, you women, you like to do this. I don't understand it. You like to say, "I love Michigan winners. I just love them," and then you're yelling at Jeff because you're in the Michigan winners. That's what happens. See, I'm starting to catch on. See, I've only been a fiance for a short bit, a little bit, but I'm starting to catch on because like there's things that like, oh, I like that, and then you do it, and they're like, no, I don't like that. I'm
Well,
like,
you should already know that we're going to change our mind. That's our prerogative. Why don't you know this?
that's okay. I know you're gonna change your mind. The women are gonna change their mind. The reality of the situation is you can't lie about liking Michigan winners because no one likes Michigan winners. I don't care if you ski. I don't care if you're a snowmobiler. Don't care. You're like, no, it's too cold. Too
Look,
cold.
look, you haven't learned yet. This is the problem here. Happy wife, happy life. That's how it works, okay? And it works for these guys too. So I don't know though. You know what I mean? Like, so Tarasenko's got a couple of cups. Kane's got cups. So I just don't know if they are driven to have their name on the cup again. I mean, of course, everybody wants it, right? But it's kind of like, okay, I've been there, done
Oh
that. If I
no,
get it, great. If I don't, it's
no,
cool. I just want to, coast. I don't know.
no. I don't think Kane. I don't think Kane and Tarasenko are wired that way because they could have went anywhere and just said screw it. But I think they came to the Red Wings because the Red Wings, even though they've been poor for the last what 10 years, they still have a brand name, and that jersey you wear is really special. So, and Patrick Kane,
Yeah.
I think Patrick Kane when he was playing with Detroit last year, I think he felt how good the city is, and if you just bring a winner, it's that place is gonna be electric. Like I was there for the Capitals game where they were playing the Capitals and they lost because Charlie Lindgren was a freaking uh, he was like the Great Wall of China, except the guy couldn't you couldn't get a puck past him. I remember I'm sitting next to his family, right? And he makes a save where he goes, it was like behind his head, and he grabbed it out of the air with his glove. I was like, you know what? We just lost. I was like, he's like, I'll buy your next
Yeah.
beer, and then I'll buy yours. Like that was the way it was. That's the way it was because I knew what was going to happen. Because when you're a goalie, you kind of get a feeling when someone's on, right?
Yeah.
It's kind of like when you take your friend to like bingo night, Cindy. That's what you old people do. And like the,
Let me
B11
grab
comes
my daubers.
B11
I'm gonna
comes on.
daub you.
Boom. You know, I wouldn't. I'm not going to say the friend's name because she will hurt me. But B11. Boom. Yes, I got B11. Oh, she's on a roll. She's on a roll. Now we're talking like, let's go. That's kind of
Are
what it
you
is. So,
trying to say that you can sense a rhythm in the game? You can sense if the goalie's got the rhythm down.
yeah,
Yeah.
it's kind of
Yeah,
like
I
a
think
good.
so too.
It's kind of like a good pitcher. Good quarterbacks in the NFL like Jared Goff this past Monday night, 18 for 18. Like, when have you
Perfect
seen
game.
that? Like, when have you seen that? It's like, it's crazy, but that's the way sports works, and it's kind of like the way the Tigers, season. We talked about the Tigers earlier, but it's the same thing that can go with the Red Wings. Like, you kind of get in this mode where like if something happens where you just start to catch on, it just starts. You know, momentum is a
There
scary
you
thing,
go.
man.
Momentum is the most powerful force in the universe. That's documented, scientific. Yes, I have my PhD. No, I don't, but I do know that. So momentum is the most powerful force in the universe, and Detroit's got it. Here's the thing: the Red Wings have to capitalize on that.
Yep.
Okay, they got to tap into it and capitalize on it because you've got Scooble taking down the Triple Crown. You've got Jared Goff throwing a perfect game.
Oh,
Now the pressure is really on for the leaders on this team to rise to the occasion because now those people, those players are starting to really set the tone and they are starting to identify Detroit with success and
yep.
excellence. Okay. So now Red Wings have to rise to the occasion because the expectation is there. Again, we talk about expectations. It's now it's there more now than ever. But instead, if they let that intimidate them, then they're gonna, start to just to fold in on themselves if they let it intimidate them, think they can't do it. They've got to believe that they can do it. They've got to tap into that energy, and they've got to ride this. And that's why they have got to come out strong in their first 4 or 5 games. I mean, they've got to get off on a string of victories so that they can establish that belief in the transplants and the new guys that are here, in the prospects, as well as in the guys who've been around for a while that keep getting these false starts or keep losing out when they're, inches from the goal line, so to speak. You know what I'm saying?
Yeah.
They've got to, they have to, all of those dynamics are very important. So I'm going to be looking for the Red Wings to come out with a very strong start. If they don't come out strong, they're already just piling onto that mountain they're going to have to climb.
Let me ask you a question. Do you think that with the success that the Lions are having, the Tigers are having, that it puts a lot of pressure on the Red Wings to perform? Like I said this in a video earlier. Like I think it was Friday I did it. I said I would hate to be Derek Malone right now. Like I would be shaking in my shoes because we seen what AJ Hinch did with the Tigers. We've seen what Dan Campbell did with the Lions. Like it's not about like okay, the Lions were a Super Bowl, contender last year, but the year that they made the playoffs, they almost made the playoffs. They weren't a contender at all,
Yeah.
you know. And so they were just about to make the playoffs. I mean, the Tigers like this is an improbable run, but like how many of these guys are like huge core pieces like an Otani or an Aaron Judge? Probably not many. But just if I'm Derek alone and I look around the city, like screw the Pistons. The Pistons, I mean, you could put them anybody could have coached better than the coach they had before. So that don't even count. You got 3 pro teams right now because
Yeah.
the Pistons are junk. But when you talk about the Red Wings, like it's like, okay, they have to do something because these teams that are the Tigers and the Lions, they put a lot of pressure on Derek Malone. Like if you're Derek Malone, I'd be shaking in my shoes right now.
Well, sure, it puts pressure on them, but that's good. It's good pressure because they've raised the bar. And I happen to be of the camp that believes that you set the bar high and people will rise to the level of expectation. And quite frankly, if they don't, better you find out sooner rather than later. And I'll tell you, if this team, and I don't care which personnel change would have to be made, but if there is someone on this team that cannot rise to the level of expectation and cannot respond to that pressure by replying with victories and excellence and grit, if you can't respond that way and instead you cave under that pressure, then Steve needs to make a change and have it well in advance of the trade deadline and already get those changes in as fast as possible. Make them mid-season. I know he doesn't like to do it, but you can't wait till the end of the season. I want to see it now. And if it doesn't work itself out by Thanksgiving, you better start making some phone calls and plan to make some changes.
It's an interesting thing because I was thinking about it the other day. Like if I'm Derek Malone, like I'm watching all these teams, I'm like, damn it. Like you're not hating on them. You're more like, okay, the pressure's been ratcheted up a little bit because what AJ Hinch is doing is a masterful coaching job. He should win Manager of the Year. You could have said
Yeah.
yes. You could have said last year that Dan Campbell could have deserved Coach of the Year. Like these guys are showing that they're the best in their business, and it's rise or shine time for Derek Malone. There's no excuses. There's no we don't have the talent because that's bullshit. Because we look at the Tigers and is there a lot of talent on that team? Potentially, but it's a young team. Like they're all young kids.
Oh yeah.
So
Look at
it's
this with I looked, it's interesting you should point that out. And I didn't mean to interrupt you, but I'm gonna.
no,
And
you're
so
good.
here's the deal. No, because here's what I want to point out to you. So when they started making this rise and it looked like they were really had a chance to make the playoffs, I started looking deep into their roster. I really hadn't looked at it, to be honest with you,
Right.
because again, I didn't think they had it. I really didn't. I started looking deep into their roster. I'm like, let me see what studs do we have on this team, really. I mean, I started looking at their stats, right? You look at batting averages. I mean, you don't have anybody who's above a 288. You got no 300 hitters in there.
Yep.
You've got no, most of these guys, quite frankly, I don't know what their average, team batting average is, but I'm willing to bet you it's somewhere in the 240s, if
Yeah.
that. these guys are not, they're not bringing, some big sticks up to the plate or anything like that, but it doesn't matter because I'll tell you, when you watch that team, and here's what the Red Wings need to be paying attention to. They were all there at the game, right? It was a big thing on social
Yep.
media. Saw it on your Instagram. Yay, rah, rah, we're here supporting the Tigers.
You're
And
right.
I hope while those guys were enjoying themselves, while they were hopefully doing some team building up, exercises and having some social gelling time and all that great stuff, I hoped they took note of why the Tigers are successful as they are. Aside from all the mental game that I'm talking about, that they've got to win their own mental game. But the Tigers' defense was outstanding. Their
That's
fielding,
what's doing it. Yep.
outstanding.
Their
Yes, you got
defense,
the pitching, right?
their pitching, their defense, absolutely
Defense
phenomenal.
outstanding.
Yeah, so that's what it shows you
Yeah.
right there. Like, yes, like maybe there's some guys that are like not that good defensively, but they are just tryhards, right? That's kind of what you got to do as in hockey. Like, you might not be a 40 goal scorer, but help us save some goals. Like, I think that was part of the problem last year with the Detroit Red Wings because
Absolutely.
you'd seen Dave Perron last year coast back. You seen Daniel Sprong until he got benched coast back, and it's like watching a team at the end of the year. It's like no wonder you're falling in this 2-0, 3-0 hole. Like hockey, it's tough, man, because you can't really fall into this hole of we're gonna play comeback every night. Like that was part of the problem with the Red Wings last year was they relied too much on comebacks and not enough on like let's close this game down. Let's do what we have to do to win this game. Kind of like the Lions did. The
I
Lions
was
did.
about to say it's like the Lions program
Yeah,
there.
you got to close it down. Like you can't just like the best teams. Like the one team that I love watching them play hockey is the Florida Panthers. Why? Because they play team defense. They don't have to score a million goals. They just want to win. Like they are committed to playing their game. And then when you play your game, it kind of pushes the other team into playing the way that you want to play. And the way that you want to play translates into your offense, it translates into your defense, the way you pass the puck, the way your power play works, penalty kill. That's what happens. And I look at the Red Wings, and especially with Derek Malone, like it's put up or shut up time now because we are seeing coaching, just genius out of coaching genius. Like these back to back coaches, like you got to do something, Derek Malone. You can't use youth as an excuse anymore because you have a guy like Patrick Kane, you have a guy like Dylan Larkin, you have a guy like youth is an excuse now because we see what the Lions did with a lot of youth. We see what the Tigers are doing with a lot of youth. Youth is only kind of like an illusion, basically, because these kids are coming ready to play. They might not be all polished together, but they're right there.
Oh, absolutely. And I'll tell you what you're talking about here, Joe, when you're talking about bringing the game to your opponent instead of taking the game that they're given to you. In politics, we call that reframing the narrative,
Yeah.
right? If someone's going to try to
Oh yeah,
box
you
you
guys are
into
good
a
at that.
narrative that isn't part of your game plan, right? You need to reframe that narrative. It's on you. It's
Yeah.
not on your opponent who brought you that narrative and box you in.
Yep.
You have to get out of that box. That's
Yep.
what the Red Wings need to do. They need to not take the game that's being given to them. You got to force them to play your game. And I love that line from Miracle that one of my other favorites, Kurt Russell, who played my other favorite coach, right? And he played when he said play your game, play your game. Now I don't know if he actually that phrase was actually used, but it illustrates the point of what that 1980s American team did. It took the Russians game and gave it right back to them their way.
Yep.
The Red Wings need to do the same thing. They need to take whatever game is thrown at them, stop them right in their tracks, like, nope, that isn't working here. And then you put it right back to them. And now they have to play your game. That has got to be the posture the Red Wings have to take here. And I'll tell you, Joe, if they start losing streaks of 3 and 4 games, it's going to be a problem. And I'll tell you, that's not what's happening if they do start going into those losing streaks. I think those are incredibly detrimental to the Red Wings when we watch to see. I don't care about really the number of victories at the end. I mean, obviously that's important, but as we're going about here looking at these benchmarks, I'm not so concerned with the number of wins and losses of where they're at any particular time or what the standings show. I'm looking at the trend. And if I see that they start going and having, 2, 3, and 4 game losing streaks, to me, that's a red flag. I'm going to tell everyone else to look for that because if you see them, they lose 3 in a row, they'll lose 6 in a row. And then they're in a slump that they can't get out of. They're on a downward spiral. And I think that this team may be very susceptible to that. So I'm going to be looking to make sure that they don't have any 3 game losing streaks,
So what you're
if
saying,
possible.
what you're saying is the Red Wings need to do what the Lions have been able to do. So Lions haven't lost a back-to-back game, which obviously the NFL season is
There you
shorter, but
go.
they have not lost a
Yep.
back-to-back game in almost 3 years.
There you go.
So it's kind of like I love what Dan Campbell says about this. Like I love the way he kind of frames it. He goes, "Look, today wasn't your day. Tomorrow, I mean, next Sunday, you got to come out and play." It's the loan should be taken. The loan should go up to Dan Campbell and ask him, Messe, how do I do your stuff? Because that's exactly what the Red Wings need to do. The Red Wings need to have the same mindset, like day by day, just take it game at a time. Like that's what AJ Hinch has said too. You're starting to develop a theme here of game by game, day by day. Do not look 3 games in the future. That's how you go on a losing streak. Don't look about your goal streak or your point streak. That's how you lose your point streak. It's game by game, day by day. I love those 2 lines that AJ Hinch and Dan Campbell have used. And I
Absolutely.
and I
It's what
if Lalone needs to really figure it out too.
is 100% accurate. And the reason why, and it builds it goes into momentum and attitude and tone. I mean, it goes into all of that stuff in the mental game, but also the reality is we talked about reframing a narrative, right? So in my business, you don't let anyone define you. And the reality is when you lose 3 games in a row or even back-to-back games, it's beginning to define your identity as a loser.
Yep.
And that is very difficult to overcome. The professionals will recognize the fact that anybody can have a bad game, right? Any given Sunday, right? Any given Sunday, anybody can win. Any given Sunday, anybody can lose. So any given game can be won or lost on any day. But it's the teams that come back from that and rebound and get back to where they need to be. Those are the ones that are successful. Those are your champions. That is almost the definition of a champion.
Yep.
That's
And
what the
that's
Red Wings need to do.
and I love these analytical nerds. Like this is my favorite thing about these analytical nerds. And I love analytics. I do. I think analytics, they show you a pathway to how you want to play, how you want to win, whatever. But you
I
got
used to be
these.
called a nerd, Joe, so be careful throwing that nerd
Well,
word around.
so here's the problem with you got these sports nerds are out of control. Like
Yeah.
I see it in football. Like this guy from Pro Football Focus, he's like, Geno Smith had a better day than Jared Goff. I'm like, Jared Goff is perfect. Like, what are you talking about? And like
Yeah.
in some of these hockey analytic guys, like they're so like adjusted to the number. They're like, oh my god, guys, the Red Wings are not good analytically. It's the same thing it's been for years, hundreds of years. Hockey, baseball, football, basketball. In the end of the day, it's still a kid's game. Still a kid's game. You might have some guys that are making $11 million in hockey, $100 million in football, $100 million in
Oh, trust
baseball.
me, they're still kids. I can attest to that.
But it's still a kid's game. Like it's
Yeah.
still like if you want to be honest, it's still a
Yeah.
kid's game. So that's what
For sure.
I look at it, and it's kind of like you don't need these drawn out expectations of what you think is how a team should look or whatever, because like that's not the way it usually rolls. I mean, there's a million there's a guy like Connor McDavid, and there's guys like you know Pasternak and Brad Marchand and Matthew Tkachuk, and they're not even in the same hemisphere of talent as McDavid, but those guys have won cups. McDavid hasn't won a cup yet. You're kind of developing a theme of it of the better team usually wins. That's what happens.
The recipe for success is the same. It doesn't matter whether you're looking at sports, any particular sport, business, politics, it doesn't matter. We have a big election coming up here in another 35 days or so, 33 days now, I think. And that's about the biggest contest in the world right now. And the recipe for success is the same as it is for the Detroit Lions or the Detroit Tigers or the Red Wings, doesn't matter. And you got to get the recipe right, and you got to have the right ingredients, because any of those things, you don't follow the recipe, you don't get the right ingredients. I don't mean to be all girly on you, but it's just a great analogy because it's true. Because a lot of those things can go wrong. You can have 98% right. If we're baking a cake, Joe, here you go. I'll give you my suburban mom, old lady take
Macomb
on this,
County. I
right?
mean, this is totally Macomb County right here.
You 100%. You're baking a cake. You do everything right. You get all the right stuff,
Yep.
except for when you go to grab the one ingredient, the two look very similar, but you grab the salt instead of the sugar. Nobody's eating your cake, Joe. Ain't happening. It's going to be a disaster. So you gotta get all the ingredients right. I think Steve has done that with putting together this Red Wings team. Now it's up to Derek Lalonde to follow the recipe.
Yeah, and that's the way it's got to go. I mean, we could go talk about it ad nauseum, and we're gonna get in this with our season preview. This coming Monday when we release it. But like the expectations for his team need to be the playoffs. Period. I know there's people that are saying no, it doesn't need to be the playoffs. If they don't make the playoffs, they at least need to look good in the process. And what I mean by that is, I mean, not have these, like you said, these 3-game losing streaks. Then you have to make your way back and be a 500, and then you go on another losing streak. I need consistent play. And at the end of the year, if you play consistently and you miss out on 2 points or whatever, and you have 97, 90, maybe 100 points, I could live with that. But I can't live with the total inconsistent play. And we talked about it for the last 2 years, Cindy. There's usually 2 months of this team where they struggle. They struggle, they struggle, they
Yep.
struggle.
And they've got to be better than 500 at home. That's the other thing.
Oh
There's
yeah, be
no
better on
way
home
they're
ice.
home ice, they got to be better than 500. I
Oh
don't
yeah,
care if it's even marginally better, but it's got to be better than that.
absolutely. Well, we're gonna talk about the season preview in the next episode, but we just thought we'd come back and recap the off season, and obviously we're going to talk to the season preview, and that's going to be fun because me and Cindy usually have some disagreements, and then we usually see who's winning at the midway point and the halfway point and the quarter point, and then at the end of the year, usually one of us is right about something, so we could say that we're right about that, but then usually we argue about who's who is more right.
Who is more right? Yeah. Don't
Well, we
worry.
said
And
both of us said the playoffs last year. We got it wrong, but we were so close. But I think
I
I
don't
think
count that.
yeah, it's all right. We're all right. But this has been a good show. Obviously, there's a lot of people that are tuning in to their Tigers game, but they'll listen to this later.
Of course they will.
Thank
Because
you guys
I'm
for
here, Joe. You see, that's what you've been missing all
um,
summer. You've been missing yours truly.
oh,
And,
I can't get a better podcast partner, that's for sure.
hey, isn't it? And you know what? I'm going to say the same thing about you, but only today, because next show, I'm going to be ready to dress you down again, Joe.
Again, here we go. See, she won something, so now she's becoming a little bit cocky, kind of like
That's
Simon
right.
Evanson. So we're good.
That's
All
right.
right, we'll see you guys on the next podcast. We talk more Detroit Red Wings hockey. When we come on the next podcast, there'll be a cute little QR code that I'll flash on our screen a couple times, so you could scan it, and it'll take you right to all our podcasts, and then you can go there and listen to them and subscribe, rate, review, and I'll even include a link to our personal pages so you can follow us there too, as well as the Red Alert page where you can follow us all the time for Red Wings hockey. But it's always good. So we'll see you
Yeah.
guys in the next podcast. And Cindy, you got anything to say?
I just say the same thing: like, subscribe, comment, follow, whatever platform you see us on, any one of our pages. It costs you nothing. It's free. Just give us a thumbs up.
Yeah, it's like a free insight into hockey, and it's that we like to have fun because a lot of these podcasts are a little bit boring, so we try to have fun, and that's what we do.
And if you guys feel like you can't give Joe the thumbs up, if it's not a we thing, make it a me thing. Give me a thumbs up.
All right, we'll see you guys in the next podcast. We talk more Detroit Red Wings hockey. I'm Joe Chap.
I'm Cindy Berry.
And we are out of here. And we'll see you on the season preview.
See you then.